The protagonist confirmed that they were there to escort them to a powerful family's estate. With quiet authority, he pushed the wheelchair forward, stepping into the car without hesitation. The convoy moved out, followed by 1,000 men dressed in black, marching in perfect unison. The sight sent shivers down the arrogant man's spine, making him realize the protagonist's earlier words were not mere threats. Terrified, he muttered to himself and fled, abandoning everything. The protagonist, however, remained composed, moving forward with unwavering determination. A loud voice echoed through the manor, leaving everyone stunned. The heavy clang of a rusty black bell rang out as a man arrived, throwing it at the entrance. The bell's toll signified an ominous warning. He commanded those with him to cry, and nearly 100 people wailed loudly, turning the place chaotic. 50 security guards stormed out of the manor, looking fierce. A well-dressed man with a square face stepped forward, questioning the intruder. The man smirked, mentioning his origins and showing no fear. The well-dressed man instantly recognized what this meant, his expression darkening. Amidst the tension, the protagonist slowly pushed a wheelchair forward. His presence shocked everyone. His voice rang out as he greeted an elder of the family, causing a wave of whispers. Some guests recalled his tragic past, how he had escaped a great disaster years ago as a child, barely surviving with help. The well-dressed man welcomed them with false warmth, but hostility was evident. When the protagonist's father walked in, someone tried to trip him, making the crowd burst into laughter. Humiliated, he turned to leave, but the protagonist stopped him, declaring that this was their moment. His chilling command followed, an order to find and cripple the one responsible. The protagonist's presence sent a wave of fear through the room, especially for an older man who recalled the young boy from years ago. Holding a mysterious pill capable of healing long-term injuries, the protagonist casually offered it to his mother, who initially refused but eventually accepted, understanding its value. As she took the medicine, the effect was immediate, requiring her to be taken to the bathroom. Meanwhile, the protagonist gave a chilling order: anyone with ill intentions should be dealt with mercilessly. His words carried weight, and those loyal to him understood their duty. As tensions rose, a disrespectful remark from a younger family member led to a swift and brutal response. The protagonist, moving with unbelievable speed, struck the offender with a single slap, knocking him unconscious. This act sent shockwaves through the Neal family, who were outraged by his boldness. However, the protagonist remained unfazed, making it clear that his patience was thin. He openly declared his desire to wipe out the entire Neal family, shocking everyone into silence. His allies, standing by, gripped their weapons, ready to act if needed. Without hesitation, the protagonist walked deeper into the manor, a place he once called home. The family's internal conflict had begun long ago due to a struggle for leadership, with his father once being the rightful heir. However, another elder had refused to accept it, igniting a battle for power that shaped the family's future. The atmosphere turned tense as a group of wealthy elites mocked the protagonist, dismissing him as an outsider unworthy of their attention. A businessman sneered, questioning his knowledge and status. However, the protagonist remained unfazed, his gaze turning cold. Without warning, he struck down the arrogant businessman, leaving him struggling on the ground. The crowd froze in shock as he effortlessly overpowered his opponent, making it clear he would not tolerate disrespect. At that moment, a high-ranking officer arrived, his presence silencing the room. The officer acknowledged the protagonist's authority, declaring that insulting him was an offense against the entire region. Without hesitation, he ordered the punishment of the disrespectful businessman, stripping him of his power and wealth. Meanwhile, another figure attempted to challenge the protagonist's dominance, but he was swiftly dealt with. The protagonist struck him down and pinned him to the ground with his blade, proving his absolute strength. As fear spread among the onlookers, a family elder intervened, warning the protagonist to restrain himself. Reluctantly, he withdrew his weapon, leaving behind a clear message: his return would shake the foundations of power. The once arrogant elites now stood in silent fear, realizing they had underestimated the wrong person. The tension in the hall was heavy as a thin, weak-looking man with a fierce gaze stepped forward. Despite his frail appearance, his hands bore signs of rigorous training. He was a well-known fighter, ranking 9th among the top 10 in the region. His family, like others in the area, had access to ancient combat techniques, though such practices were strictly monitored. The authorities had the right to punish those who misused their strength, ensuring no harm came to ordinary people. The fighter lunged at the protagonist, his claw-like hand reaching for the throat. Onlookers sneered, convinced the protagonist was powerless against such an opponent. But just before impact, the fighter's expression changed. His attack halted midair, an invisible force keeping him at bay. Horror filled his eyes as he recognized the overwhelming strength before him. With a single word, the protagonist forced him to his knees. The floor cracked beneath the pressure, and the entire hall was filled with the weight of his power. Everyone, including the strongest members of the family, collapsed to their knees, trembling in fear. The gap between them was undeniable. A voice rang out revealing the protagonist's true strength. He had risen to unmatched power at an early age, single-handedly defeating thousands. His name alone commanded fear, and with a mere order, he could summon warriors of immense strength. The hall fell silent. No one could deny the terrifying reality before them. The protagonist's sword landed before a defeated man, sealing his fate. Trembling, the man gripped the weapon, but it was too heavy for him to lift. The protagonist sneered, refusing to let him die by such an honorable blade. Overcome with shame, the man took his own life on the spot, shocking those around him. His family erupted in anger, but the protagonist remained unmoved. 1,000 warriors in black drew their swords, their presence overwhelming. Fear spread as the truth of the protagonist's strength became undeniable. A powerful figure demanded justice, but another warrior calmly reminded him that their status made them no different from others. As tensions rose, a commanding presence revealed the true power backing the protagonist. One after another, legendary commanders were introduced, each a formidable force, leaving their enemies frozen in terror. With cold determination, the protagonist avenged past wrongs, punishing another man who had wronged his family. As the storm raged, he declared his father the rightful leader of their household. His gaze turned to those who had suffered, vowing to restore honor. Finally, he asked where his fallen relatives were buried, his expression darkening as he prepared for what came next. The atmosphere was tense as a black convoy arrived, marking the entrance of an old woman with a dragon-headed cane. The moment she stepped out, a sharp voice called out, questioning who dared to speak about her so casually. The man who had been conversing earlier greeted her with a hearty laugh, addressing himself as her second brother. She responded with a faint smile, acknowledging the birthday gathering but questioning if he had truly come to celebrate. However, the mood quickly soured as the man scoffed, showing disdain for the one whose birthday it was, accusing him of betrayal and seizing power. Another man, dressed in a suit, stepped in, demanding an explanation for an injured family member. His demand was quickly silenced by his own elder, who saw no need to discuss the embarrassment publicly. At that moment, another figure entered the scene, exuding calm authority. The young woman beside the old lady was delighted to see him, calling out his name, but the elder gently corrected her, encouraging her to speak properly. The young man took the umbrella from her and respectfully greeted the old woman, addressing her as his grandmother. Meanwhile, another person, furious and in pain, pointed at the newly arrived man, claiming he was responsible for his injuries. The conversation took a sharp turn when a composed voice stated that the one being celebrated tonight was no longer alive. Shocked, the man in the suit questioned whether it had been a natural death, only to be told that it was suicide. The old woman sighed, understanding the deeper meaning behind the situation. Despite her efforts to defuse tensions and suggest handling matters later, anger still boiled among the injured man's family. They refused to let the matter slide, emphasizing the severity of the attack. However, their elder, sensing something ominous, decided to retreat, realizing that pushing forward could bring unforeseen consequences. With cold determination, the protagonist avenged past wrongs, punishing another man who had wronged his family. As the storm raged, he declared his father the rightful leader of their household. His gaze turned to those who had suffered, vowing to restore honor. Finally, he asked where his fallen relatives were buried, his expression darkening as he prepared for what came next. The atmosphere was tense as a black convoy arrived, marking the entrance of an old woman with a dragon-headed cane. The moment she stepped out, a sharp voice called out, questioning who dared to speak about her so casually. The man who had been conversing earlier greeted her with a hearty laugh, addressing himself as her second brother. She responded with a faint smile, acknowledging the birthday gathering but questioning if he had truly come to celebrate. However, the mood quickly soured as the man scoffed, showing disdain for the one whose birthday it was, accusing him of betrayal and seizing power. Another man, dressed in a suit, stepped in, demanding an explanation for an injured family member. His demand was quickly silenced by his own elder, who saw no need to discuss the embarrassment publicly. At that moment, another figure entered the scene, exuding calm authority. The young woman beside the old lady was delighted to see him, calling out his name, but the elder gently corrected her, encouraging her to speak properly. The young man took the umbrella from her and respectfully greeted the old woman, addressing her as his grandmother. Meanwhile, another person, furious and in pain, pointed at the newly arrived man, claiming he was responsible for his injuries. The conversation took a sharp turn when a composed voice stated that the one being celebrated tonight was no longer alive. Shocked, the man in the suit questioned whether it had been a natural death, only to be told that it was suicide. The old woman sighed, understanding the deeper meaning behind the situation. Despite her efforts to defuse tensions and suggest handling matters later, anger still boiled among the injured man's family. They refused to let the matter slide, emphasizing the severity of the attack. However, their elder, sensing something ominous, decided to retreat, realizing that pushing forward could bring unforeseen consequences. The woman stood anxiously at the side door, hesitant to step inside due to strict family traditions. Concerned for her daughter-in-law, she remained outside. An elder woman noticed and sent a younger woman to check on her. The younger woman greeted her warmly and offered to help her back inside, but tension filled the hall as silence took over. Outside, 1,000 men dressed in black stood motionless in the rain, creating a chilling atmosphere. The family, once arrogant at the entrance, now found themselves speechless. One man, previously confident, was now in shock. Meanwhile, a conversation unfolded as tea was served. A man respectfully offered tea to a senior family member, who accepted it with a trembling hand. Another elder observed the situation, noting how the Neal family's leadership had changed. The new head of the Neal family remained humble, acknowledging the guidance of his elders. Then, the introduction of the protagonist took place. The mention of his name left the older generation in awe. A child who had left years ago had now returned with an overwhelming presence, leaving those who once knew him filled with envy and admiration. The revelation hit like a thunderbolt. 7 years ago, a man and a woman had taken something from the grave. The man's mind raced as he pieced together the implication. His fourth uncle, a legendary figure whose presence had once overshadowed all, had something that others sought. The rain poured relentlessly, but he stood unmoving, gripping the tombstone tightly. Memories of his childhood flooded back, the days he had spent following his fourth uncle, watching in awe as he dominated all challenges. That brilliant light had been snuffed out too soon, leaving only whispers of his former glory. He took a deep breath, suppressing the emotions swirling within him. He turned to his companion, his voice steady but laced with an edge. Who were they? The ones who disturbed this grave? His companion hesitated before responding. There are records, but tracking them down won't be easy. A cold smile formed on his lips. It doesn't matter. I'll find them. With that, he turned away, his mission clearer than ever. The past had been disturbed, and he would unearth the truth, no matter the cost. The protagonist had never worried about money, given his high status and power. But when his father expressed concern over a large sum, the family was divided on how to handle it. His mother was frustrated, and another woman suggested asking her family for help. However, both parents strongly refused, fearing how it would look to outsiders. Ignoring their protests, the protagonist took his father's phone and made an overseas call. The secretary on the other end refused to disturb their boss, but the protagonist remained firm. He gave a simple message, stating his identity and demanding a callback within a minute before hanging up. His mother sighed at his direct approach, while another woman playfully scolded him for his temper. His father, still puzzled, asked about the person on the other end. The protagonist stood before a powerful figure, a man who commanded over 100 top-level warriors. Silas, a wealthy and influential businessman, knew that such experts were beyond the reach of money. He had once encountered this man in a terrifying moment years ago when his plane had nearly crashed into a northern military camp. That event had marked him forever, and he had since heard countless stories of this legendary leader of the northern region. Respectfully, Silas addressed him by his title, but the man dismissed the formality, reminding him that he was simply at home. Silas, however, found it difficult to call such a powerful figure by name. When the protagonist called Silas earlier, he had missed the call, but now he was eager to hear what was needed. The protagonist reminded Silas that it was time to return the favor. Silas did not hesitate. He recalled how 3 years ago, the protagonist had saved him, his wife, and their 2 children from certain disaster. If not for him, they would not have survived. Without hesitation, Silas offered to give all his wealth in gratitude. The protagonist's father then stepped in, explaining that the family needed a large sum of money to repay their bank debts. Silas immediately agreed, insisting that he would transfer the necessary amount without expecting anything in return. However, he emphasized that no amount of money could ever truly repay the debt he owed for his family's survival. His words shocked those present, especially Heather, who had not known about this past event. Meanwhile, Silas, despite being one of the world's most successful businessmen, saw this as an opportunity not just to return a favor, but to strengthen his connection with the protagonist and his family. The protagonist remained calm despite the curiosity of the young woman beside him. His years of training in the harsh northern region had made him composed and unshaken. When asked about his time there, He explained that the northern border was not a place for leisure. It was a land of hardship, filled with endless barren deserts where survival was a daily battle. The weight of his words silenced her as the car arrived at the university. Stepping out, she was immediately noticed by her classmates. A lively girl in a red dress approached, teasing her about being escorted in a prestigious vehicle. Curious, she tried to peek inside, but the protagonist only gave a calm nod in response. Recognizing him, the girl suddenly recalled an old engagement rumor and blurted it out, causing immediate frustration. The young woman's face turned red with embarrassment, and she quickly tried to stop the conversation before more attention was drawn. Despite her efforts, the unexpected revelation had already been made, leaving her flustered. Meanwhile, the protagonist remained unbothered, his mind unaffected by such trivial matters compared to the battles he had faced. The protagonist's words had angered everyone, but he remained unfazed. His identity carried immense weight. He had held a position of power at a young age, earning the title of a formidable leader in the northern region. At just 17, he had already been recognized as an exceptional warrior, making him someone who did not need to seek approval or favor from anyone. The crowd viewed him with disdain, but he had no reason to show them any courtesy. In response to a remark, a young woman in the group lashed out, while another tried to calm her down, aware of the protagonist's true influence. Meanwhile, a man spoke about the Northern Military School, highlighting its prestige. He explained that students entered at 16 and graduated as officers, earning high ranks upon completion. It was known as the foundation for future leaders in the military. The protagonist confirmed these claims, revealing that the school accepted fewer than 1,000 students each year, many of whom secured positions before even graduating. Once they completed their training, they joined the Northern Army, a force recognized as the most elite for a decade. This army, consisting of 10 legions, each with 100,000 soldiers, stood as an impenetrable defense against external threats. The weight of his words silenced everyone. His connection to such an esteemed institution and its unmatched warriors left no room for doubt about his strength and authority. The driver had no idea how terrifying the young master of the Neal family truly was. He thought he could rely on the Smith family's power to disrespect him, but he did not realize that in Preston, there was no one the protagonist could not afford to offend. The truth was far crueler than he imagined. At the Neal family manor, the atmosphere was tense. It was early in the morning, but the place felt unfamiliar to the protagonist's family. Once, they were part of this household, yet they had been forced out for 13 years. Now that they had returned, fear gripped every member of the Neal family. At the entrance of the bright hall, a man knelt motionless. He was once an influential figure, one of the top martial artists in Preston, but now he was broken. Kneeling the entire night had drained his strength, leaving him unconscious. The protagonist walked past him without a second glance. A woman beside him couldn't bear to see it. She pleaded, reminding the protagonist that this man was family, his uncle. But the protagonist remained unmoved. He remembered too well how the same man had chased them away on a rainy night years ago, forcing a young boy into hardship. He had even caused his mother's suffering. Such a person would not be forgiven easily. Ignoring the past would be impossible. Instead, the protagonist whispered to his mother, suggesting they visit his grandfather's house at noon. She sighed, understanding that the pain of the past could not be erased so easily. The scars of 13 years still remained fresh in her son's heart. The atmosphere was tense as the protagonist observed the Quinn family's cold attitude. The woman in the wheelchair, her eyes slightly red, had finally given up on them. She had hoped for kindness, but today's events proved otherwise. Some people did not deserve forgiveness. As the protagonist questioned their actions, a man from the Quinn family arrogantly declared their influence, dismissing any guilt. But before they could continue, another man stepped forward and threw 18 contracts onto the table. The Quinn family scoffed, impatiently demanding they leave. However, when one of them glanced at the documents, his face turned pale with shock. The others noticed his reaction and grew uneasy. The noble-looking woman beside him frowned, demanding an explanation. With a shaky voice, the man revealed the truth. These were contracts with the powerful Neal Corporation. The Quinn family was left speechless when they realized their entire agreement had no penalty clause. It meant the Neal family could break off the contract without paying anything, and the Quinns couldn't even recover a single cent. The room fell silent in shock as a calm voice urged the eldest to sign the paper. It was the return of a man named Harry, an adopted member of the Quinn family, who tried to act as a savior. He brought out contracts for 2 major projects, a hospital and an ecological park, hoping to take them back. But the Neal family had already countered this move with another contract, offering only minor, incomplete projects in return. Despite the unfair deal, Harry insisted they accept it, knowing the Quinn family couldn't complete larger projects alone. He had already reached out to another powerful family for investment to help finish the 3 smaller projects. After much hesitation and frustration, the eldest finally signed. Just then, Lewis received a video call from a renowned business tycoon who announced his corporation would inject funds into the Neal family. What was meant to be a simple loan became a permanent investment, showing that powerful forces were now backing the Neal family fully. The protagonist calmly rejected the offer of 10% shares from a powerful investor, insisting it was too much. The influential figures in the room, including 36 top directors, stood and addressed him with deep respect, recognizing his strength. Their overwhelming presence didn't faze the protagonist, who saw them as no different from ordinary people. After a brief negotiation, they settled on just 1% shares, clearly revealing that the true motive behind the massive investment wasn't profit, it was to build ties with the protagonist's family. Once the deal was accepted, it shook the rival family. One man, unable to hide his jealousy, realized that the protagonist's family had become unstoppable. Even powerful families combined would struggle to match them now. The father, once silent and patient for years, revealed his strength and fearlessness. His threatening words showed that he hadn't forgotten the past and was ready to reclaim what once belonged to him. As the protagonist watched his father regain confidence, a quiet smile appeared. Now that he had grown strong, it was his turn to protect his parents. When challenged by enemies boasting about powerful fighters, the protagonist remained calm. The air shifted when he sent his parents away. His presence became heavy, forcing even the proudest rivals to their knees. That moment revealed his true strength. He was not to be underestimated. As the Quinn family faced their worst defeat, the once proud elder finally realized how one wrong choice had destroyed everything. Their downfall came not from force, but from the silent dominance of the protagonist. The car fleet quietly drove away, leaving only regret behind. At the Neal family manor, guests had already arrived. A young businessman from the Sage family waited respectfully. He had lost his father years ago and now carried the weight of his family's future on his shoulders. The protagonist calmly joined him and listened to his offer. The young man offered $300 million and promised more if needed, hinting that his corporation could support the Neal family financially. But he had a condition: the protagonist must break his engagement with a woman. Though the offer was polite on the surface, it was filled with pride and business-minded coldness. The protagonist remained calm, refusing to entertain such a deal. The young man questioned his knowledge about the woman's likes and feelings, trying to weaken his confidence. But it didn't work. Just then, a confident and elegant woman stepped in. She revealed her powerful corporate status and defended the Neal family. With grace and presence, she addressed the protagonist with deep respect, leaving the young man stunned. Despite rumors of collapse over the past 2 years, the protagonist's family shocked everyone by securing $70 billion from a major corporation in exchange for only 1% of their shares. This strategic move revived the company's strength and solidified the protagonist's cousin as chairman, earning him the respect of all employees. While calm on the surface, the protagonist remained sharp and alert, sensing deeper intentions behind a powerful man's recent offer to break off a marriage arrangement. The massive price offered wasn't for the woman, it was clearly tied to hidden gains. As he considered this, a man entered with news about the missing ashes of the protagonist's second and fourth uncles. Tension filled the air as the protagonist's calm shattered. His disappointment was intense. He had returned not just for a ceremony but also to honor his family, and this loss felt personal. But then came shocking news. There were traces that one uncle might still be alive. That possibility stirred hope. Without delay, the protagonist ordered an immediate investigation. He then left his home, accompanied by a high-ranking officer. Knowing how dangerous he could be if provoked, the officer chose to escort him personally. As they sped down the highway, a traffic jam slowed them down, adding pressure to an already urgent mission. The protagonist remained silent while a powerful black helicopter approached, cutting through the sky and stirring up dust with its spinning blades. This was no ordinary aircraft, it was a high-end military S-97, known for its speed and reliability. Onlookers were shocked, unable to believe that someone they underestimated could summon such power. As a rope dropped from the helicopter, the protagonist and his companion calmly climbed aboard, hiding their strength from the crowd to avoid unnecessary attention. The helicopter bore the symbol of a battle sword, representing the feared Preston teen. Its presence meant only one thing: an emergency that required unmatched skill and authority. In a nearby vehicle, an old man recognized the symbol and wisely chose to stay away, advising his granddaughter not to interfere. The helicopter flew deep into a dense forest once threatened by overdevelopment but now protected. Upon landing, they were met by 12 individuals, 8 members of the Preston team and 4 unknown fighters. One team member was gravely wounded. His injuries were severe and the leader demanded answers. A strange and powerful shadow-like beast had struck, too fast to trace and far too dangerous for normal weapons. The team knew they were up against something fierce, and there was no room for hesitation or mercy.